Night in Calamore didn't test him anymore. For 6 months, the town had stayed intact. Shutters mended, fences upright, watchmen sober. Elijah's work had been small. He burned a lesser demon out of a grieving man 2 towns over. He and Candy cut down a pair of ghouls at the creek mouth before they found the bridge. No parades, no sermons. He slept most night without the old jolts. He spent his days inside doing ordinary work. He fixed a door that wouldn't close. He spliced a line for the laundry yard. He set a broken hinge on May's back gate and didn't take payment. When someone asked for a psalm, he read it and put the book away, considering he had one of the only full Bibles in existence. Jennifer ran the mare and kept the rooms above it full enough to pay for wood and flour. She hadn't sold her body since the night they met. She said it once and never had to say it again. Candy fit herself into their life as if she had been born for it. Under the bar when the room filled, at Elijah's heel in the yard, in the doorway after the lamps blew out. He had never carried this kind of belonging with him, and he carried it carefully. The ring stayed cool. Some evenings he even forgot about it, which felt wrong and good at the same time. He would sit at the bar with a cup and watch Jennifer wipe the boards in long, even strokes. Candy would lie with her head on his boot and breathe through the last hour. The door to the inn would open and close as it would. He would go to the stable late, talk to Luther while the horse chewed, and count the quiet. The trouble came in on a cold night near closing. A man from the east pushed the door and stood inside it as if the hinge were holding him up. Dust filmed his teeth. His hands shook around a cup he hadn't ordered yet. Jennifer poured water first and he drank. She then poured rye. He held it but didn't drink it. 2 weeks east. If you keep your horse. Town's big. Bigger than this by a long walk. Women and children vanish. No ransom, no bodies. He swallowed. He watched the rim with the cup. There's a church at the center. Charity house beside it. They feed people. They take in orphans and the ones with no roof. The man in charge, Jasher Hardwick, 2 sons. People want to believe in them, and I used to. What makes you doubt? Elijah asked. My girl. She went for stew in their yard and never came out. I searched until my legs quit. I slept an hour in the dirt and got up and kept looking. If you go east, you look there. I've heard you're a man that cleanses things. The ring warned. Not a flare, but a steady rise that meant the hour had been chosen. Elijah pressed his thumb along the band and felt the heat answer him. Candy came out from under the bar and stood at his knee. Jennifer wiped the same clean place twice and said nothing until the room settled. How many missing? Elijah asked. Dozens. More this last month than all summer. Elijah nodded. The ring kept its slow burn. He stood without scraping the stool. Candy rose with him. Jennifer's eyes went to his hand, then to the door, then back to him. Room upstairs, you'll take it, she told the traveler. The man tried to protest. He failed. He climbed the narrow stair, holding the rail with both hands. When the room was theirs again, Jennifer reached for Elijah's strap and checked the stitching she had checked last week. You have to go, don't you? She asked. He laid his bag out and she socked it. bread and jerky wrapped tight, cartridges counted into loops. The needle threaded and set in cork, flint oiled, spare linen rolled. She slipped a small bolt cutter into the bottom of the pack and did not look at him when she did it. He checked St. Breaker's cylinder by touch. He drew saw blade and ran the edge once along the leather and let it rest in the sheath. He pulled the chain through his hands for burrs and found none. Rope, hooks, lime, chalk, 2 torches. The habit calmed him. "Bring her back," Jennifer said, looking at Candy. "Bring you back, too." "I'll try both," he said. It was all he could say. They kissed once, brief. She tied a ribbon into her hair with hands that didn't shake, then used those same hands to tie his bundle for the road. He went to the stable and stood with Luther until the horse's breath steadied his own. "Looks like we're back to work, Luther," he told the animal. Luther tossed and snorted, answer enough. Candy slipped in and pressed her paw to Elijah's thigh and held his eyes. He rubbed the old scar at her ear. Before first light, Jennifer set the bundle on the bar and folded his fingers over it. The town was dark and cold. Somewhere a window thumped shut. May's forge sat quiet. He left town, and at the gate he looked back once. There Jennifer stood, arms folded to keep from wringing her hands. And Elijah, Candy, and Luther set off. They took the road that braided the dry river. Elijah kept his thoughts ordered. 2 weeks east, a church, a charity house, a man named Jasher, 2 sons, missing women and children, no graves, no ransom, a traveler who couldn't stand to listen to hope preached over an empty bed. The ring warmed and held. Candy ranged and returned, keeping Luther's knee in sight. The sun climbed in a thin line. He didn't speak much, but when he did, it was to the dog. "If there's a way to do this without too much trouble, we'll find it. If there ain't, we'll do it anyway." Candy's ear flicked. She took her place at his left, and then he rode east. They reached an old relay house near dusk. Roof patched with scraps, shutters wired shut, door barred from the outside. The place shook every few breaths. Not wind. Boards tapped in sequence, then stopped, then started again. Elijah lifted the bar and stepped in. Cold air, sour straw, a table braced with torn hymn pages. Under a joist, a charm hung from the twine. 3 nails crossed, a clump of hair, a strip of scripture written backwards. Every turn of the hair set the rafters shivering. "It's bound wrong." He cut the twine, split the nails, and spoke a psalm straight through. The shaking quit. Dust settled. The air didn't feel holy, but it didn't feel as wrong as it had before. A spirit was stuck here, and Elijah sent it on its way. On the 4th day of travel, a mule screamed at the ford and went quiet. Elijah ran the bank. 2 ghouls in the shadows worked the carcass like butchers. The farmer stood in the far stones with a fence post over his head, too far to use it and too close to run. Elijah put a round through the first one's eye. The second lifted fast, spine bent, hands open for his throat. Psalm blade met it in the water. It still clawed, and Candy hit the neck and held it until the twitch of the body left. The river carried the blood until the current thinned and the stones showed again. The farmer lowered the post and shook all over. "I didn't see the second. Thank you, girl." He looked at Candy. He looked at Elijah's blade and holster. "And thank you." They hauled the mule to the bank so it wouldn't foul the crossing. Elijah checked the culvert for more. Empty. That night, the farmer fed them stew and set a blanket by the stove for Candy. He pointed to Elijah, to the clean corner of the barn, and brought another blanket without being asked. No prayer over the food, just tired gratitude. In the morning, Elijah helped him hang a new gate and set it true. He took no payment, and they shook hands and parted. On the 9th day, Elijah came across a pump house that had long since become a chapel. The pump was gone, and the stone shell remained. One woman kept the keys in the shelves. She studied Elijah, then Candy, then the ring. She unlocked the door and let them in. "You're headed east." "I am." "There's a charity house in the big town. They call it the Foundry. They take in strays." "So I've heard." "You can stay here for the night. I've got quite a collection of reading material if you'd like. I've been saving books and diaries and almanacs for as long as I can remember." "Thank you kindly." She let him work through the shelves. Old manuals, farm almanacs, half a hymnal. A thin journal tucked behind a cracked atlas. Handwriting neat and small. Days from the first months after the sundering. Elijah found a leather-borne worn journal that had seen much better days. The pages were brittle to the touch. He opened the first page and read aloud to Candy. Journal. Entry 1. The day it broke. It was a day like any other. No sirens, no speeches. I was carrying bread home. The sky went from a blue to a white that hurt my bones. Some people looked up. Those who didn't die for it were blinded. It was not one blast. It was a chain. Somewhere, someone flinched first. And then every other hand on the key turned. Because no one knew how to stop and no one knew where the first explosion came from. The ground shook in waves. Glass fell in a rain that didn't cool. We saw a horizon that kept moving toward us and then away again because even the very air currents couldn't seem to figure out where to go. Men said it was war. 2 hours later, there weren't enough men left to argue the word. After the grid died, not all at once, but like a string of lamps falling down a street. Some swore they heard a voice. Some swore they heard nothing at all. By nightfall, those of us who could still see led those who couldn't downstairs, and we counted our water, we learned the names of our neighbors, and we waited for help that didn't come. In the days that followed, the rumors started. Angels over the river, fire without smoke, cities that burned under clear rain. I don't know what any of it meant. I only know that the sky is not to be trusted and that the ground can open without warning. If there is a God, I hope he is kinder than what men have in their heads. Elijah turned the pages with his thumb, counting dated headings. Candy shifted, pressing her weight to his boot. He stopped at a thin entry halfway through, marked Entry 15, Year 3 in the same tight hand. We're still here, which feels less like mercy and more like a punishment. I've kept my wife and boy alive, but I don't know the price yet. We boil water that tastes of rust and ash. We trade salt for shoes with soles made from tire sidewalls. We sleep in shifts because the night has taken on a job of its own. The neighbors are different people now. We hide what we have and hate ourselves for it. I killed a man at the pump last month. He had a knife. I have a son. This is the math now. I don't write his name. If I write it, I'll have to remember his mother's face when we pulled him off the grate. Cults have grown like weeds in the lots where houses used to stand. Some people paint ash on their faces and wait for a horn that no one has heard go off. Others burn books to keep warm and call the smoke a sign. There are people who claim to be prophets who have never learned to read, and demons that don't bother hiding. I have seen a woman climb a wall like a spider, and I have seen a man speak with a voice that was not his. I have also seen men hang a thief from a bent street light and call it justice because they were hungry and scared. God feels far away from this place. If he is here, he isn't answering the knock. Maybe he's tired of us. Maybe he's watching us to see what we become when no one is watching us. If that's the test, we're failing it most days. I keep a ledger of what we trade and what we owe. My boy asked me yesterday if the sun will ever be the old color again. I told him yes. Because a father should give a child one thing to carry that isn't heavy. I don't know if it's a lie. We don't speak the word future in this house. We speak morning, noon, and night. We speak water, bread, and wood. I write this so I'll remember that we were people before we were survivors. And so that someday, my boy will know we tried to stay human even when the world told us it wasn't worth the work. Elijah thumbed ahead 20, 30 pages. The paper felt thinner where hands had worried the corners. New handwriting took over, same tight lines but heavier strokes. Entry 39, Year 7. My name is Thomas. My father won't write again. He died this morning in a raider push at the East Alley. 3 men with pipes, one with a rusted pistol that still worked well enough. My father went. He put himself in the door and bought us the minutes we needed to get to the back room. He took 2 in the chest and stayed standing long enough to swing the shovel handle into the one with the pistol. I dragged him inside and barred the door with the table. He bled out with his cheek against the floorboards, and I could never get the scrub mark out. I'm 25. I thought I was a man last winter when I took a deer with a single shot and brought the meat home without losing any to the dogs. I was wrong. Today made me a man, and I hate what it took to do it. My mother's hand shook so hard she couldn't even hold a cup. My sister didn't make a sound for 3 hours. Then she vomited. I wrapped my father in the canvas he cut for storms. I dug in frozen ground with a pry bar and a pot lid when the spade hit stone, and I'll feel that work in my arms until I die. There's no one to ask what comes next, so I'm writing it down. I'll take his place at the pump in the morning and on the roof at night. I'll count the jars and mend the shoes and say no when men come to trade nothing. I will not let my mother see me cry again after tonight, or my sister. Now it's my turn to be strong. My dad taught me to keep records because a man should be able to look back and know what he did with his days. So, here's the record. My father died defending his family. He died facing the door. He died with my name in his mouth. He died in this godforsaken world. I'm writing this with his pencil and his blood still under my nails. Tomorrow, I'll burn the clothes and scrub the floor. I'll keep watch. If there is a God, he saw the way my father died defending our family. If he didn't, I saw it. And I will remember. Elijah felt his emotions stirring reading these pages. The world hadn't gotten any better. If anything, it got worse. In the beginning of the Sundering, in the first few years, first few decades, it said that you had to watch out for the depravity of man. Man did unspeakable things to his neighbors. But as time went on and things became more depraved, the gates of hell opened wider and wider, and the monsters in the night became more and more common. More demons, more ghouls, more vampires, more evil, not just of man. Elijah thumbed forward again in the journal. Year 10. I found this book under a crate of broken plates in the pump house. The first hand that wrote in it is gone. So is the second hand. Maybe he moved on, maybe he didn't, I don't know. I'll add my story. We were in a town that had managed a kind of order. Not peace, but order. We had a watch, a bell rope, a ration board chalked fresh each week. Folks mended fences together and kept an extra chair by the stove. My wife kept the key to the dry store. My boy fed the goats, and my girl learned to read by tracing words we found in old manuals. It was thin, that life, but it held on. An evil man rode in near sundown. He came alone, but it felt like he brought a crowd with him, the kind you don't see, the kind you just feel. He told us we'd been stealing what was his. Said the road we used was his. The water we drew was his. The right to judge was his. He picked a woman out of the line at the well. She had done nothing but fill a bucket and carry it. He dragged her to the square. We argued, we begged, we offered grain. He didn't want grain. He wanted to show us what kind of world this is. He took her there in front of us. Had his way with her. Did what he wanted. There's nothing we could do. The man was armed. We had no guns here. He shot her through the chest the way he might snuff a lamp when he was finished. No speech, no charge. He stood over her and laughed. I thought that was the worst of it, but it wasn't. His body began to change in front of us. His skin pulled tight like a drum. Then it opened. Flesh parting like doors pushed from the inside. What stepped out didn't belong to any name I had before the sundering. 4 legs, no eyes, A face full of teeth, rows and rows, working like a mill? Steam coming off of it in the cool air? The man who'd worn it dropped like a shed coat. We ran. The square emptied in a scramble. I got my family into our house and threw the lock. My boy cried. My girl held the dog and shook. My wife looked at me like I had something better than wood between that thing and us, but I didn't. The demon came down the street slow, like it knew there was nowhere for us to go. It tested doors with a push of its head. When it reached ours, it set its weight and drove. The wood bowed. On the third hit, I felt the nails tear in the jamb. I prayed, and I'm not even a praying man. I said whatever I had fast and low. I told God if he was listening, this would be a good time. Hoofbeats cut through the street. One horse-hard run. The demon paused at the sound and turned its teeth toward it. A man rode into the square. Coat, hat, dust all over him. He didn't slow much. He pulled a gun that looked too heavy for one hand and fired once from the saddle. The shot hit the thing in the head. The body took 2 more steps without it and then folded, legs first like a busted table. Head completely annihilated. The man dismounted without hurry. He put another round into what was left, not for show, but to make sure the world wouldn't get uglier in the next breath. Then he stood there looking at the dead man's coat, and I swear there was a kind of sorrow on his face that didn't ask to be seen. I opened my door. "Who are you?" I asked. "I am the Lord's weapon." He didn't say more and didn't need to. He said it as if the words themselves were a weight. I don't know what happened to the first and second hand that wrote in this journal. Well, I guess I do know what happened to the first. I missed it the first time I read, but a man gave his life for his family. And then the son took up the mantle. What happened to him is nowhere in this journal, but I hope he's still out there doing what his father taught him to do. I don't know what tomorrow asks of me, but I do know this. Evil wears men, and sometimes men wear evil. But there are still those who stand in the road and say no. If you find this book, all I ask is that you keep going. Elijah closed the journal and held it a moment. The ring was warm on his finger. He didn't speak. Candy exhaled and put her chin on his boot. He slid the book onto his pack, stood, and nodded to the woman at the door. "I'll bring it back," he said. Then he stepped into the dark. Elijah saw the city from a mile out. Smoke, lines of roofs, a scatter of towers that had once been part of something larger. Wind carried kitchen ash and tannery bite. The road widened and split around a dead oak the size of a wagon. People flowed past it both ways, eyes on their feet. He slowed Luther at the gate. A plank arch with a board guard and a toll bowl. Elijah dropped 2 coins and asked for a decent stable and water. The man pointed without lifting his head. "Copper's Yard, 2 streets in, left of the broken statue. Don't stay off the dock." Elijah nodded once and rolled on. Candy paced to his knee, close and ready. The ring warmed steady, a coal held in cloth. He'd had it on his hand long enough to know the difference between alarm and instruction. This was the latter. It meant watch. Cooper's yard was crowded, but clean enough. Trough scrubbed, hay stacked dry. A boy with a twisted hand met Elijah's range with the competence of someone who had learned to do one thing well and who liked doing it right. Elijah rubbed Luther's neck. He gets 2 buckets and an extra nose bag. Check is all fine enough. The stone bruise is near mended, but he'll favor it. The boy nodded. Elijah slid him a 3rd coin he hadn't asked for. And keep people away from that hoof or they'll find themselves in the dirt. Yes, sir. She bite? His eyes cut to Candy and softened. Only one needs biting. Candy flicked an ear and leaned into the boy's hand for one brief second. Permission granted. Elijah checked the trough with his own eyes, tasted the water, smelled the grain, watched the boy carry Luther's shoulder with good pressure and clean strokes. Satisfied, he strapped his kit tighter and stepped back onto the street with Candy at heel. The main road ran like a river between buildings that had been patched with whatever was at hand. Tin sheets, wagon boards, old signs. Posts at every corner were covered in paper. Notices layered over notices. Names, ages, descriptions. Small drawings made by rough hands who had seen a face and were trying not to forget it. He read a few. 12, 9, 28, 3. He stopped at one posted low, at a child's eye level. Marta, age 6, last seen in a blue shawl near Bray Street Well. He touched the edge of the paper with his thumb, then let it go. People gave him looks. Some recognized the badge turned upside down on his coat and turned away. Others glanced at his hands and then at the dog. They came upon a cracked fountain in a broad square, water running slow around a basin lined with worn stone. A group of women worked there with buckets and cloth, faces set with the patience of permanent labor. Children lay on their bellies and fished sticks through the shallow flow, trying to catch leaves, pretending it was a game and not a way to keep out of the way. Candy's pace changed before Elijah said a word. She angled toward the children, tail low, body loose. Elijah clicked his tongue once to say yes. She lifted her head, walked in, and sat. The smallest boy in the group reached out like he was expecting teeth but found velvet. His mouth fell open in relief. Candy tolerated the first rough pet, then leaned her skull into his palm. The other children closed in, cautious then braver. A girl laughed, a short surprise sound. The women looked up startled. One flinched and pulled a child back by the collar. Another grabbed her bucket with both hands like she meant to swing it. Elijah lifted his palms. She's safe. She's mine. Candy kept still, head at child height, tongue out once to test the salt of a dirty wrist. The ring warmed. Elijah's eyes tracked the edges of the square without moving his head. Men on a bench under the eave, a woman selling pins, a boy with a basket of sour bread. One of the women, though, a narrow-faced elder with white-streaked hair pinned back with 2 bones, looked too long at Elijah's hand and the ring on it. Her eyes changed. She made a small sound in her throat. "That's him," she said. "Elijah." The name moved down the line of women like wind. "The Lord's weapon?" a younger one asked, not sure if she believed in such a thing. Elijah didn't answer the title, but he nodded. "I came because I heard. Tell me what's been happening." They hesitated. Fear and habit tightened their mouths. The elder's jaw worked as if she were chewing a decision. She stepped closer, still holding the wet cloth, water dripping onto her wrist. Months. Women and children. At first, 1 a week. Now, 2, 3, sometimes more. Always night, always quiet. No blood in the street, they just go. Who was the last? Marta, yesterday, the younger mother said from behind the elder, eyes red-rimmed but dry. Blue shawl? I turned my back to wring a cloth, and then she wasn't there. I ran the whole square. People looked at me like I was a crazy person. They said I must have miscounted. How do you miscount your own child? Elijah absorbed it without comment. He nodded at the elder. Where do people gather for help? Bray Street, Mercy Table, the church. Jasher Hardwick, he feeds the hungry. Says service leads to salvation. Keeps a long line every morning. His boys help. Nathaniel with the ledger, Calic with the sack. They also own the foundry downriver. Work and bread, bread and work. Those who go missing, how many of them come from his line? The elder stared at him like she'd been waiting for someone to ask the question. Too many. But say that aloud and you might not see the night. A younger woman glanced around and leaned in. If you go to the mercy table, don't go alone. Don't go in the yard. They funnel you through the sides. We don't see many come back out. Another added. Sometimes we see the same faces from the line for a day or two and then never again. Jasher says they've been set up with work, but we don't see them working. Elijah looked at the children at the fountain. Candy's body had gone even looser. There weren't many children in Grey Ditch, otherwise known as Callamore. Elijah's throat tightened. He put a hand on Candy's back. Come, he said. The children groaned and clung harder for a moment, then, seeing Elijah's face, let go. One little girl with a scar along her lip put both hands on Candy's cheeks and whispered something into her fur. Candy flicked an ear and gave the girl a lick, then pulled away. To be safe, y'all need to pair up after dark. 3 if you can. No one on errands alone. Keep your doors barred. If you hear a knock with no words behind it, don't open. Elijah and Candy made their way across the town. Elijah getting the timing right, understanding what happened when in this town and who it happened with. After all was said and done, him and Candy went back to Luther for a last pat and a quiet word at the stable. Then walked out on the east road to the scrub hollow where he'd chosen when he'd arrived. He liked to sleep on dirt the first night in a place. It told him if the ground meant to give him up or to hold him. He made a low fire and smothered it to coals. He tore bread and fed Candy pieces between his own. She ate. Then set her head on his thigh and watched the dark with him. He took out his pocketbook and wrote. He wrote what he saw today, what he reconned. Bray Street, Mercy Table, Jasher H., Sons Nathaniel, who keeps the ledger, Calic, who keeps the alms, Foundry behind, Cat walk to church, side door takes 6 at a time. Jasher Hardwick preaches a gospel of works. Give to others and more will be given to you. Work for the Lord, do good. Earn your salvation. He closed the book. The ring pulsed once. He looked up into the night and spoke without sound. Is this yours or only ours? The only answer was the small noises of a city getting ready to sleep and the far cry of someone calling a name that didn't answer. He slept in his coat with his hand on the dog. When he woke before dawn, he could still feel the ring's warmth through the fabric like a coal in the seam. He rubbed Candy's ear once. "We're gonna see to the back of it," he said. She wagged her tail once against the dirt. He stood, checked Saint Breaker and the saw blade, coiled the chain with care, and moved toward the city while the sky still thought about light. He didn't go to the front this time. He cut around to the alley behind Mercy table and crouched in the stink of old rain and sour waste. Candy lay flat at his feet, calm as river stone. He watched the porter door and the ladder's shadow in the places where a hand had scuffed the wall too many times. He waited until the first line formed and the sermon started. He waited until he could move and not be seen moving. Then he was gone into the hedge and the gap along the service wall. He had what he needed. The times, the faces, the habits. Daylight had given him enough. Night would do the rest. He touched the ring once with his thumb, not for luck, only to acknowledge who owned his own feet. Candy flicked him a glance that said she was ready. He breathed and stored the breath. The city went on talking to itself, and he listened. Late evening laid a thin crust of dark over Bray Street. Elijah and Candy came back to the church where the yard had been emptied and the last handout bowls were stacked by the door. No voices in the nave, no hymnal. Only a faint glow behind the apse. The ring on his finger held steady heat. They circled once. The charity house hung off the nave like an extra limb. Kitchen windows black, yard raked smooth. At the apse, the flagstones told more than the door did. On the inner wall, a line of scuffed footprints walked to blank plaster and ended. No door. A draft brushed his knuckles where the mortar should have sealed it. He slipped inside. The nave smelled of soap and lye over old wood. Benches straight, floor scrubbed. Candy ghosted down the center aisle with her nose low, checked the pews one by one, then stopped behind the pulpit screen. She stared at a crate of hymnals, breathed once and lifted a paw. One short scrape on the boards, a look up at him and back to the seam. Elijah put a hand on the crate and eased it aside. The boards below didn't match their neighbors. New grain, different nails. Near one corner, an iron ring set flush into the wood. He worked the saw blade under the seam, shoulders quiet, and leaned. The board gave without a sound and rolled back on a hidden hinge. Black mouth under the pulpit. Cold air up the throat of it. He pinched a tallow stub to a thin slit of frame and started down. The stair was narrow timber, steps shallow and mean, built for a body to carry weight into the ground without notice. Candy came behind, feet careful, head low. The air changed by the fifth step. Damp wood, iron, stale breath that had nowhere to go. Linen rot, and under it all, the faint thread of weeping that had hung too long. Thinned to a kind of leaking sound. The ring stayed warm against his skin. The stairs flattened into a chalk corridor tall enough for him to keep his head low. Whitewash on the walls caught the little light and threw it back a dull smear. No painted symbols, no words. Doors appeared at intervals on his right. Heavy planks. Iron hasps turned outward. Locks squared to the hall. Control from the outside. He held the wick low and glanced through the first hatch slit. Dark stacked on dark. A sound like someone holding breath too long. He didn't speak. He cut a small cross into the jam with a knife tip and moved on. Second door, same hasp, same lock. The smell here was worse. Piss, fear, wool left too wet too long. Something shifted just out of the slit and went still. He marked it and walked. He listened between steps. The place had a rhythm to it. Breath, a cough crushed back, a scrape. Then a sound from deeper in, the kind of cry people make when they run out of voice. Halfway down the hall, a shallow recess opened on the left. Coils of chain, spare cuffs, a bucket with a dark lime dried around the lip, a keyboard with no keys, just wire hooks waiting. He kept going. The corridor bent left. The air grew warmer. Candy pressed closer to his leg, ears forward and silent. Another bend. The corridor turned and the light thickened. Candles sat on the floor in a rough ring, their stubs guttering. Heat wavered low. The room opened. Bare walls, packed dirt, iron sunk into the center. A woman lay chained there, wrists and ankles shackled to an iron plate set a hand's breadth into the floor. Her skin was cut in long bands, some fresh, some scabbed. She didn't cry. Her breath came in short pulls and stalled, then started again. A man stood over her, back turned, whip in his right hand. His left hand lifted to steady his aim for the next strike. Candy let out one sound, a low growl small as a cough. The man turned. The whip was already moving. Elijah didn't think. His hand went to the throwing knife and let it go. 8 feet. The blade hit high in the neck with a dull punch. The whip still landed. It cut across Elijah's face and ear. Heat, then burn, then wet. He didn't stop. He stepped in, took the man by the shirt, lowered him to keep the noise down, and rolled him into the candle wash. Calic Hardwick, the son who worked the alms sack that afternoon. The face was clean-shaven, the mouth still set in a line. No trance, no foam, just a man dying on a floor he thought he owned. Elijah's mind tried to put him into a pattern that made sense. Assistant, servant, something written by a worse thing? Some demon? But the room did not offer him any sign to ease the thought. He went to the woman, psalm blade in his palm. 2 quick cuts at the cuffs. Iron rasped, then gave. He checked her pulse, checked the pupils with a hand shade over a candle. Responsive, slow, but alive. He took his canteen out and set it to her lips. Small sips. I'll come back, he told her. Candy pressed her head into the woman's palm. The woman's fingers closed clumsily on Candy's ear and held it there like it was a handle. Elijah stood, wiped the blood from his cheek with his sleeve and moved on. The smell worsened as he went. Blood, piss, lie, a sourness from bodies. Candles marked the way every dozen feet, their lights set for feet, not faces. He kept to the wall, wick still pinched out, letting the candle line carry his eyes ahead. Voices now. Men talking. Orders and answers. He stopped at the next corner and listened. Put that new stock in the cold pans. Order lots to Holden. No marks on the clean girls. Buyers pay for the clean ones. Brats to the dark cells. No noise. Gags on the mouth at ones. Jasher. The same tone he'd used in the yard, stripped to polish. Another voice beside it, his son, Nathaniel, shorter words. The pace of a man who watched the numbers. Elijah's jaw set. Stock, lots, clean. He filed the words where his mind would let them sit for now, as men serving a worse thing. He waited for the tell, the stink, the shift in the air that meant a demon was about to show itself through their hands. The ring on his finger stayed warm. No spike. No confirmation of anything. He counted the voices. 5. A murmur of more further off. He catalogued the clatter. He took one breath, then another. and slid forward toward whatever the light would show next. A stack of empty crates and 2 barrels came into view. He dropped behind them. The room beyond was low and wide, cut out of old stone and shored with timbers. 10 cages stood in 2 rows, iron. 2 or 3 bodies in each, women, children, bare feet, torn shifts, rope burns at the wrist, some gagged, some not. 5 men worked the room. 2 carried a ledger and a ring of keys. 3 moved bodies like sacks, heads down, elbows up. Jasher Hardwick stood near a pillar with his remaining son, Nathaniel. Jasher spoke, Nathaniel marked. A second door, canvas hung over its frame, flapped as more were forced through. 3 women, blanket stripped, faces pushed into the iron until the latch caught. Something in Elijah stopped flinching. He had been wrong. There was no demon in the corners, no stink of summoned air. This evil was plain. It wore boots, and it wrote in chalk. The ring on his hand went from warm to burning, not a warning but a confirmation. The evil here was man. Cold metal touched the back of his head. "Don't twitch," a voice said, close. "Shut that mud up or I'll do it for you." Candy's growl rose. Elijah clicked his tongue once as she went still. "Gun. 2 fingers and slow." Elijah drew Saint Breaker with 2 fingers, held it by the barrel. When the man's hand closed on the grip, Elijah turned, fast. Psalm blade cleared the leather and crossed the man's throat in one line. Open skin, then the line opened wider. Blood hit the crate, the floor, Elijah's sleeve. The body folded onto itself and slid. Jasher saw him. Nathaniel saw him. Keys clattered. 3 handlers dropped the new cage latch and came at Elijah. Machete, metal pipe, short knife. Elijah didn't reach for the revolver. He wanted distance closed. He stepped inside the machete arc. The blade bit wood where his head would have been. Elijah beat the man's forearm with his left wrist, turned his shoulder, and pushed the saw blade under the ribs up into the lung. Air went out of the man in a dry sound. Elijah withdrew and let him fall. The pipe came high for Elijah's skull. He ducked late. The edge caught shoulder and sent cold through bone. He wrapped the chain of Golgotha around the man's wrist, yanked, and brought the hilt of the saw blade hard into the throat. Cartilage cracked. The pipe clinged on stone. The man went to his knees and stayed there. The small knife slid in from behind. Elijah felt it before he knew it. Wet heat between ribs, the close breath of a man at his back, the push and twist a butcher uses. He sucked in air that wouldn't fill. Candy exploded off of the barrels. She hit the knife man in the chest and bit sideways into his neck. A tear and surge of blood. He clawed at her muzzle and found nothing to hold. She went down on his heels, then flat. Elijah staggered, hand pressed to his side. Saw blade readjusted to guard. Nathaniel took a step, then another, knife low. Jasher stayed back and lifted his hands. "We can deal," Jasher said. "You've got talent. There's demand. That ring on your hand don't pay in coin, son, but I do. Walk out of here rich, and stop bleeding for strangers." Elijah didn't answer. He watched Nathaniel's feet. Left foot led, knife in right hand, elbow tight. Nathaniel lunged. Elijah stepped outside the line, caught the wrist, torqued the elbow until it screamed, and used the turn to put Nathaniel's spine toward him. Psalm blade went in at the notch where bones break if you hit it right. It slid without resistance. Nathaniel stiffened from the heels up, then sagged. Elijah pulled the blade free and let the body slide to the floor. No one spoke. The women in the cages watched with their mouths closed, every breath measured. Jasher moved a step toward the canvas door. Candy cut the angle, head low, teeth shone. He stopped. Elijah walked toward the spilled revolver. He kept his back to Jasher and didn't hurry. The knife in his side burned. He could feel a line of blood running under his belt and down his hip. He didn't bend until he had to. Behind him, Jasher found his voice again. "You don't have to die down here. You think the world cares who you are? You do this forever, and for what? I can use a man like you. You can use me. There's no sin the coin won't cover." Elijah didn't answer. He crouched, picked up Saintbreaker, and rolled the cylinder with his thumb. He kept the gun low. "I killed one son in the other room," he said, still not turning. His voice was raw but steady. "I just killed the other in front of you." "What else can you take from me? You don't have anything left to threaten." Elijah looked at the cages. Watching was part of it. "The rest of your torment you'll learn soon enough." "Who are you?" Elijah turned. He raised the Saintbreaker and sighted center chest. "I am the Lord's weapon." He fired once. The sound filled the room and shook dust from the joists. Jasher took the shot like a man who'd never been hit. He looked surprised. He folded. Nathaniel kept a ledger of all the women they'd taken, and it dropped from his dead hand and popped open onto the floor. The echo died. The candle flame steadied. Somewhere, water dripped. Elijah walked to Jasher's body and pulled the key ring. His side screamed when he bent. He made himself breathe through it. He went to the nearest cage and fit the key to lock. The third key turned. The bar lifted. He set it aside and swung the door. The woman inside did not move until he stepped back. "Out. Slow. Help each other." He went to the next cage. Keys again. 12, 15, 20 people and more? Candy moved among them, letting small hands touch her head, bumping a knee here and there to keep bodies moving. Murmurs rose, no sobbing, not yet. A girl with a bad leg put her arm over another girl's shoulders. He found the cage with the 3 new arrivals, their wrists still bound. He cut rope and set them outside the bars. He moved to the last 2 cages. 30 people, maybe more. He glanced at Candy. She was looking at him, not the crowd. Her ears were forward. She knew he was bleeding more than he should. He tried to put the keys away and missed the pocket. He took a breath and the edge of his vision tightened, black rising in from both sides. He heard his own breath go shallow. He tried to step and his knee didn't lock. The room tilted. He put a hand out for the pillar and found air. He exhaled and went to the floor. Candy's paws were on his shoulder before the stone met his cheek. He heard someone saying his name. The ring still burned. Then everything dimmed to a colorless quiet and he was gone. He woke to thread-pulling skin. Heat from a few candles pressed against the walls. The room was small, low ceiling, smelling of boiled linen and iron. Hands worked across his back. When the needle bit deep, he grunted. "Quiet," a woman said, flat and certain. "If you tear, I sew twice." Another voice at his shoulder. "Water." A warm cloth slid along his ribs, lifting blood and grit he hadn't noticed until it left him. Elijah breathed through the next tug. He felt the line of the wound remade under the woman's fingers, straight and uncompromising. The needle went out. A knot cinched. Palms pressed salve. "Done," the stitcher said, stepping back. He turned his head enough to see her in the candle wash. The older laundress from the fountain, sleeves rolled, jaw set. "I see you found my niece. Her name is Vivian." The younger woman, one of the freed, held the bucket and cloth. He knew her face from the cage door. Elijah pushed up on his forearms. The room swayed and steadied. "How'd I get here? Where's my gear? Where am I?" Candy thumped her tail once from the floor, then pressed a cold nose into his palm. He let his fingers rest between her ears. His hand stopped shaking. "Most ran. We didn't. Your dog wouldn't leave you, so we didn't either. We rolled you on a tarp and dragged you out the church side. No one left to stop us. My house is 2 streets over, safer here than under that godless roof." The older woman made a sound and nudged the chair with her foot. On it, his coat, stiff with dried blood, the chain, saint breaker, and the psalm blade wrapped in a rag that had once been a tablecloth. "All of your stuff. We kept watch." "How long have I been out?" "Hours. You've got a while before dawn." He levered to sit. Pain answered. He swung a knee under him and tested weight. "Sit," the older woman said. He pushed past the word. "Sit your ass down." Yes'm." "You lost blood for 3 men. You're going to eat, sleep, and do nothing clever for days, a week if you've got sense." "Thank you." Her mouth thinned. "At least you can let me do after bringing my girl home and gutting the filth that took her. I buried my brother and his wife after a ghoul took him years back. She's been mine since." Elijah eased onto his belly again. Candy jumped light onto the bed and curled along his side without brushing the stitches. The woman dimmed all but one candle and left the room. Candy's slow breathing moved against him. Days passed. He ate what the older woman put in front of him and didn't argue. Broth, then bread, then meat that made his hands steady again. Water until the ache in his head loosened. Small walks across the room. Stitches pulled and held. The younger woman came and went with quiet steps. She swapped bandages, watched the wound for heat, and asked short questions that had answers. When he could sit solid without graying out, she asked for stories. He gave her the parts that didn't put knives back into her sleep. The road east with Candy. The way a house can be haunted by a wrong prayer, the creek where ghouls like to work the shade. He told them what lay under the church. Only pieces at first. He didn't go into specifics. Elijah and the younger woman talked quite a bit over the past week. On the 7th day, he put on his belt, tested the draw, and didn't wobble. He thanked them each day, and each day they waved it off. When he was lacing his boots to leave, the younger woman was there with the water skin and a packet of clean cloth. "Take these, change the dressing at night." "I will." Take me with you. I can sew, cook, keep a wound clean. There's nothing here for me but the sound of that room." Candy's head snapped up from the doorway. Her ears went forward. She looked from her to Elijah, then held his eyes. Elijah let out a slow breath. I travel alone. And back home, at the Gilded Mare, there's someone waiting. There's someone waiting for me for once. He didn't say Jennifer's name. He didn't need to. Vivian watched his face. She swallowed and nodded. In that one look, she could tell what this woman meant to him. Then go to her. She took his hands and thanked him one last time. The older woman came out. "Broth for the road," she said, thrusting a jar wrapped at him. "Bandages? If you tear my stitches, I'll chase you to the grave to tell you about it." He smiled with half his mouth. "Yes'm." He checked Saint Breaker, felt the cylinder seat and the catch click. He slid Psalm Blade home and made sure the chain didn't snag the coat hem and shouldered his pack and set his hat. "Candy," he said. She was already up. They kept the door quiet on their way out. Luther lifted his head and blew softly when they reached the small shed behind the next street. His ears flicked forward. Then he set his feet and took the saddle like a thing that meant forward again. Elijah stroked his neck and felt joy run under the skin like a pulse. The road home opened clean. No things in the ditches, no wrong air hanging over the river crossings. No ghouls to kill or chase away. He camped once in a stand of burned willow. Candy slept pressed to his side, and he woke to birds arguing about grain and dry grass. His back ached. The last morning, the hills he knew rose the way they always did. Luther found the old pace without prodding. Candy trotted long and easy, head scanning, tail loose. Elijah felt the ring sit warm against his hand. When the Gilded Mare showed itself, he loosened up. He slid from the saddle, handed Luther's reins to the boy with the milky eye, and promised extra oats. Candy went through the door ahead of him, tail already beating once. Jennifer was behind the bar. She looked up, and relief moved across her face. She came around the counter and stopped only long enough to check his eyes for fever and his gait for lie. Then she put her hands on his face and kissed him once. "Home," she said against his mouth. "For a while," he said. She nodded. "For a while is what there is." Candy pressed against both their legs and made a small sound that wasn't quite a bark. Elijah put his hand on her head and kept it there. The room breathed. The hinge complained like always. Somewhere, out past the far edge of town, the work waited. He let himself stand in the light a long moment. Woman, dog, heat. Then took a seat and had himself a much-needed drink. Hey everybody, Kevin here from Nightmares Nightly. Let me know in the comments what you think down below. And tell me, what kind of person would you be after the sundering? Would you be like the man in the Notebook? The one who clung desperately to his humanity? Or one of the depraved,